All right, Kyla, take it away, please.
Okay. Most of you should know by now that a couple of years ago, they completely revamped the W-4 for the federal. Um, there used to be what was called withholding allowances, where you'd pick how many based on how many people lived in your house. But they completely redid it and they no longer have those anymore. Um, so today we're going to talk about the W-4, the Nebraska W-4, some other forms that potentially could help out our taxpayers, and then some resources that you can refer them to if need be. So the new W-4, so the first there's multiple steps now. So the first step is just very basic: their name, their social, their address, and then what filing status they use generally on their tax return. So single, married, filing separate, married, filing joint, qualifying surviving spouse, or head of household. So they would just check the box on this. Now, for some people, that's all they need to do. They can, if they don't want any other adjustments made, they just check the box and that's it. So for some people, it's very simple, but check the box and move on. However, there are these other steps here that people have the option to do. And all of these are optional. It's not a requirement. Even if some of these apply, they can do it or they don't have to. So in step two, they really might want to, if they have multiple jobs or if their spouse is also working. The reason that you would do this is, when you have multiple jobs, they don't withhold as much as they should necessarily, because they're thinking you're just having the one job. They don't know that you're having the extra income. And so when you check that you have multiple jobs, this will increase the amount of withholding they take on your from your W-2, so that'll help cover for you having multiple jobs. So you can do it two different ways. You can, if you only have one other job or your spouse just has one other job, you can check this box. And again, it's just a check box saying, I have another job. But you have to check it at both jobs. If you do this option, you have to check it on this form and you have to check it on your other jobs, W-4. If you don't want to do the checkbox option, there is a multiple jobs worksheet, and you would do this if you have more than two jobs, or if you don't want to do this checkbox option, you want to calculate it yourself. And on my next slide, I'll show you what that multiple jobs worksheet looks like and kind of step you through that. So that's step two, they have multiple jobs. Step three, this is to offset that they're getting the child tax credit or the credit for other dependents. Again, this is optional. So maybe some people, they don't want to have this marked even though they have kids, because they want to have more of a refund on their tax return. Because this will adjust their withholding to be less because they are getting this credit on their tax return. So it's completely up to the client if they want to do this or not. But if they do have children under 17, they would multiply 2,000 by however many kids they have under 17. Or if they're over 17, or if they're another type of dependent that's not a child, they would do the 500. And if you notice, these are the amounts of the credits that you would get on your 1040: 2,000 per child for child tax credit and 500 for credit for other dependents. So if they want to have their withholding be decreased by however many kids they have because they're getting this credit, they can do that. The fourth part is also optional. If, for instance, some people have bank accounts that have interest, or they have capital gains or dividends from stock sales or some other kind of income that they're not taking withholding on already, they can include that income on here and have more withholding taken out from their job. So this can help cover some of those additional income that you have that's not a job. So they have that option to have more taken out because they have other income outside of their job. They can also have less taken out if they have certain deductions. Like if they paid into if they had HSA, IRA, student loan interest deductions, they can decrease their withholding because of those deductions as well. And there's a deduction worksheet that they can fill out, and I'll show you that in a couple of slides. And then this last part here is if none of these apply or all of these apply, but they still want extra withholding that has nothing to do with anything else, they just want more taken out for whatever reason, they can just put whatever amount they want per pay period, and they can have that additionally taken out. Is there any questions or comments so far? Okay. And then at the very bottom, the employee has to sign it and the employer has to sign the document. So both parties have to sign it, and then the employer will keep this in their files. So this is if they don't do the checkbox option for multiple jobs, this is the multiple jobs worksheet. A little complicated, but if they just have 2 jobs, I'll show you on the next page really quickly. So there's these charts. This is the one, I just pulled the one for married, filing, joint, qualifying, surviving spouse, but there's a separate chart for single, married, filing, separate, and head of household. There's a separate chart for that. And you find your higher paying job, however much that is, and then you find how much you're making on your lower paying job, and then you find where they meet. And then that's the amount that you put on the worksheet. So let's say in your main job, you make 50,000, and in your other job, you make 10,000. So then you would find the $2,220, and that's the amount that you'd put on that worksheet. If you have 3 or more jobs, you would find the amount on the table for your highest job, and then your next highest job would be your lower paying, and see where those intersect. And then you would add your 2 highest paying jobs together, and then your lowest job, and add those together, and then you do the calculation. So it gets kind of complicated when you have 2, 3, however many jobs you have. And then as far as pay periods go, because they might be paying different, some of them might be monthly, some of your other job might be bi-weekly or weekly or whatever. So then you have to calculate based on your highest job on when you get paid. And then you have to divide that to figure out the amount that you would put as far as the withholding goes. But like I said, this multiple jobs thing, this is to help them cover the cost of having multiple jobs, because some people, like if they have a really low paying job for one of them, they don't take out hardly any withholding because that job would fall under the 10% or less bracket. But if you have a higher paying job, it'll be in a higher bracket, so percentage wise it'd be higher, but neither job would account for that unless you do this calculation. Now this worksheet, unlike the checkbox option where you have to put it on both, this worksheet, you only do it on the highest paying job. You only do this worksheet on your highest paying job. So if you do the checkbox option, you have to put it on both, or however many on both of them. And if you're doing this option, or if you have 3 or more jobs, or if you want to do this for the 2 jobs, you have to just do it on the higher paying one. So this is where some of the really complicated stuff comes in and people get very confused. Any questions on the multiple job portion of the worksheet? I know that was very confusing and there's this big old charts and things like that. Okay. So then there's also a deduction worksheet, like I've mentioned, if they want to have their withholding reduced. So if somebody happens to itemize as opposed to taking the standard deduction, they can reduce their withholding by a percentage that they're using as itemized deductions. Or like I said, if they're taking their student loan interest, IRA, HSA, or a few other things that are under adjustments to income on the 1040, you can put those in as well and have your withholding decreased for that as well. So there's options for people to have their withholding increase, and there's options for them to have them decreased. But again, it's up to them if they want to increase or decrease. But these are just some of the options that they can do to help get to where they want to be. Any questions on the regular W-4 before I move on to the Nebraska one?
Yeah, Kyla, so on the, if they use the worksheet for multiple jobs, that
Yes.
basically assumes that the additional withholding or the change in withholding is going to come from the highest paying job only.
Yes.
And so then the lower paying job or jobs won't, they won't use this, they won't see this form.
Right.
They just keep the regular.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. So because the IRS completely revamped how they do that form, they don't do allowances anymore. Nebraska decided that they were still going to, so they developed their own withholding sheet that people have to fill out now. So this is what it looks like. Again, the top part, basic personal information, first name, last name, social, and address. For Nebraska, you only have to check if you're single or married. The other options are not there. But then for Nebraska, you would put how many allowances. So you would still do the allowances for Nebraska. Nebraska also has a box if you want just a random additional amount taken out for Nebraska, you can put just a dollar amount there too if you want. Or which you can on the federal as well. If you're exempt from needing to have withholding, if you qualify for that, you can just write exempt here. And same thing on the federal one. If you're exempt from needing withholding, there is a place where you can put exempt. For the allowances, there is a worksheet on the bottom of that form where you go through and you put a 1 next to any of these things that apply to you. So you'd put a 1 for yourself. So pretty much anybody, unless you're being claimed by somebody else, you would put a 1. And then you'd enter 1 if any of these things apply. You'd enter 1 if you have a spouse. You'd enter 1 if you have children. You could enter 1 if you're doing head of household, and then it would be totaled, and then you'd put that total back up here. So Nebraska still does withholding allowances, and the federal does not. So that is why they did that. Is there any questions on Nebraska's? Okay. So there are a few other versions of withholding documents that people might need to consider. So if any of you have any of the international students that come in, they would fill out a W-8 BEN instead of a W-4, because then this could take into account if they have a treaty with their country. So some of them may need to fill out this form instead. If you want withholding taken out on your pension or annuities, you could fill out a W-4P if you want to have withholding taken out on there if it's not a question within your online pension thing. You could fill that out and have that taken out. There's also a W-4R for non-periodic payments. So this would be like if you had an IRA or something and it's just, you're taking it out one time. It's not a multiple thing throughout. So this is just if you have certain one-time things that happen that you want withholding taken out on. There's a W-4S if you have sick pay. There's a separate W-4 that you can fill out. And then there's a W-4V, which people would use if they want withholding, if they don't have it taken out already through when they apply for these things. It's for like unemployment, Social Security, other government payments that people get. They can have withholding taken out on those. And then the other option for people to have more withholding taken out if they would like is to make estimated payments throughout the year. Any questions on some of those? Okay, so I did put links to the different things. So as of right now, 2024 is still in draft version. So I put 2023s and I put the draft version of 24. They're not that different. And then I put the one for Nebraska up here as well. There is a couple of other things that I wanted to show everyone. So if we have people asking and they really want to know, there is an option to there's this tax withholding estimator on the IRS website. So what they can do is they can go into this estimator and it has several questions that you can put in. So you'd put in your filing status, you'd put in if you have if you have a job or not that regularly withholds. You can select if any of these things apply to them. Then you would put in what type of income you have. And then it would have you enter how much you've already withheld, how much you make in estimated payments, and then each type of income you put in, it'll ask you what you withheld already this year, because it kind of depends on what time of the year you end up doing this, and how much you've estimated throughout. And then it'll go through and it'll also adjust for the different adjustments and deductions and credits that you're getting, and it'll give you an estimate on how much withholding you will want to have throughout the year. So if you have a client and they're like, I want to know how much should I be doing, they can go in and use this calculator to estimate their withholding. Okay, oops. Okay, so if they don't want to use the calculator, there's still a publication PDF version with all of those different things in there. So if any of the taxpayers want some good old reading, there's this 40-page document here, and they can read all about tax withholdings on the different forms that they can use to withhold for different things, how to change withholdings, different things like that. So if they really want to deep dive into it, they can take a look at this. And at the bottom of this, well, in the middle of these, there are some different worksheets. Let's see. So like this one is a flow chart to say, should I do estimated taxes? So it flows through and say, yes, you should make them. No, you should not, based on your answers. Let me see. There was another chart that I was going to so it does also show in here your expected taxable income and how much tax. So there's tax tables in this workbook as well. There's a worksheet to project your tax for the next year. Where was that other one that I was going to show everybody? Oh, yes. If some people think that they might be exempt from needing withholding, there's this flow chart here that they can go through to see if they're exempt as well. So there's some different flow charts and graphs in this as well, and a bunch of different worksheets to calculate different things if people want to. So there's estimated tax worksheet, there's an estimated tax for Social Security, there's estimated tax for self-employed, estimated tax for standard deduction. So there's a calculation if you have dividends and capital gains. So there's all sorts of worksheets in here if people really want to get into their amount of withholding. This would be for farmers, but annualized estimated tax worksheet, that's mostly for farmers. They have to annualize their taxes since they sell stuff at different points in time. So yeah, so this has a bunch of worksheets if they really want to get into the weeds and learn where everything's going and everything's coming from. The other one that I wanted to show you is this is the publication that the employers use. But it is available to the public, so if any of them want to look, one thing to note is you didn't have to fill out the new version. So in this worksheet, there is brackets for the employers to calculate the withholding if you did not fill out the new version of the W-4. So as you can see here, W-4 form, if you filled out the new one for 2020 and later, or if you still have the old allowance one from 2019 or earlier. Because the W-4 form you don't have to fill out every year. It's only if you have changes that you want to make. So there is still percentages that employers can use if any of their employees haven't updated to the new form. So so if we look here, so there's this whole worksheet that the employers will do to figure out how much should be taken out for an employee's paycheck. So again, if somebody's really interested and they want to look through this, they can. So like this is the 2023 percentage method. So if somebody made between 36 and 104,000, the amount of withholding is 2,200 plus 12% of the 36. So if they want to look and be like, well, why is my employer calculating this amount? They can go in here and they can look it up if they want to. The only thing they have to watch out for is to make sure they get the right chart. Because there's a chart for, like I said, there's a chart if you did your W-4 before 2019 or after. So this one on the left is for if you did your form 2019 or before, the old allowance form. And this side is if you did the new one. The other thing you got to watch out for if people look at these is if they use the bracket method instead of that chart up there, you have to make sure you have the right type of payroll. So this one is for weekly payroll. So you're getting paid this amount per week. And then it'll show you approximately how much will be taken out. And then let's see, and then like see here, this one's bi-weekly. So there's like 6 different ways that people get paid most of the time. So there's a chart for each one of those. And then, like I said, there's a chart for if you did it, if you have the new W-4, and there's a version if you did the old W-4. So if any of the clients are really, really curious, they can go look in here and they can see why they're having that amount taken out. This is what the form looks like as a whole. So like I said, it has the name, the different check boxes, and then the optional things and the signature. The instructions are in the middle, and then the worksheets are after the instructions. So sometimes people might be doing this thing and they're like, wait a minute, where's all these worksheets at? It's after the instructions. So they have to go down after the instructions. And then, like I said, here's the different charts for the multiple jobs. Like I said, I had just put in the married filing joint one, but there's one for single and there's one for head of household. Like I said, 2024 is in draft still. So it should be up soon though. And then the state of Nebraska, its instructions are in the form document. And I accidentally closed it. So as you can see in here, it has the top initial things. It has the withholding allowance worksheet, and then at the bottom it has instructions for both employees and employers. So it'll if they want to look specifically at how Nebraska's gets calculated, they can look at this worksheet as well. So, there any questions or comments or anything anybody wants to mention about this topic?
Yeah, so Kyla, one of the things that we could probably help taxpayers some, but one of the most common things that I've seen is when a child ages out, and
Yes.
so they lose $500 per child. One couple had twins, so all of a sudden their taxes go up by $1,000.
Yep.
Well, taxes didn't go up; their credits went down.
Yep.
So if we have somebody that has a dependent that is on that age limit, can warn them that, by the way, you better talk to your employer, because employers typically don't look at that each year and say, oh, gee, these kids are aging out, better change the withholding.
No. Yep.
So the other thing, I had a nephew and his wife who ended up with like a $1,200 tax bill last year. And so this usually comes up in April when they pay last year's taxes. And so they're already into April or May. So they've already had partial withholding at the old rate. And now they're trying to figure out the spreadsheet or the worksheets and all that stuff going forward. They were totally confused. So what I ended up telling them was, well, if you owed 1,200 last year, you're probably going to owe about 1,200 this year. Take that additional lump sum that you can do per paycheck, spread it out over the rest of your paychecks, and just don't do anything else. Just have them withhold that extra flat amount over the rest of the year. And so sometimes you can avoid a lot of that confusion by just saying, well, how much more do you want to have withheld? And just plug it in as a lump sum.
Yep. Yep. I had a lady come in that same thing, and I just had her say, well, I'm like, well, just do you want to do an additional amount? And I had her do that instead of going through all the worksheets too.
Yeah, because most of the people don't know, they're guessing anyway, and it's just it's a mess to try to go through all those worksheets.
Yep. Any other questions or comments?